President Trump will join Republican lawmakers this week at their luncheon to help get tax reform done.
Trump is meeting with the congressional Big Four on the leadership.
I'm very confident that we can reconcile through a conference committee. We can work out our differences.
Embattled Senator Al Franken due to address the media over a growing list of women accusing him of inappropriate sexual behavior.
The Democrats are absolutely obsessed with power. Power matters to them. Morals and ethics go out the window.
The funeral for Texas Border Patrol agent Rogelio Martinez was this afternoon. Martinez died after suffering head injuries in an apparent attack last week while on patrol in a remote border area.
Mick Mulvaney has a new job despite still being in his old position. President Trump's tapped him to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
President Trump actually tweeted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, has been a total disaster as run by the previous administration's pick.
Mulvaney is the one who called the Bureau a joke. We could be looking at a legal battle here.
Griff is dancing right now.
Listen, it's Taylor Swift.
For everyone at home, Griff is totally Team Swift. He's dancing, he's loving
Definitely
it. He's
Team
even
Swift.
raising the roof, which I didn't know was still a thing. But
It is for middle-aged old guys that are on Team Swift. But Team Swift allows me, and Lisa Booth, we were getting you on Team Swift.
I've already been on Team Swift. There's
I'm on Team
I don't
Britney
need
Spears.
convincing.
I've been on Team Britney Spears for 2 decades. I'm not leaving Team Britney Spears.
That's not even. That's not it. But that's not. It's Taylor Swift and Katy Perry. That's the.
There's more than 2 teams. You can.
No, but like that's there. But there's like a. That's their.
You can be on both.
That's where the bad blood is.
You can be bipartisan. In fact, you can even just have 2 directors at the Consumer Financial Protection Board.
You can. It's like Christina.
Which is really.
Remember it was Britney and Christina Aguilera. Like that was the battle back in the day, and I was clearly on Team Britney. For all of you, you remember that. Just like you were trying to transition to the news of the day. I was like,
I just thought we would, but listen, I will talk T Swift for the next 2.5, 3 hours if you need to.
If we want to keep our audience here.
Yeah, we're going to
You
get
mentioned
in trouble if we do, actually.
two people for the same job, which we were referring to a little bit. Well, there's a bureau called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was formed during the Trump administration. That man on the right, you saw it on the screen.
Under the Obama administration.
Excuse me, under the Obama administration, after as part of the Dodd-Frank legislation after the financial meltdown. Mick Mulvaney, who's the current director of OMB and a very sort of a Freedom Caucus conservative, was selected by this president to take over the CFPB because the current director, his name is, I don't even know what the current director
Richard Cordray.
Richard Cordray resigned. However, Richard Cordray believes that the successor should be his deputy, who's an Obama appointee.
Leandra English, right. So
there comes the bad blood.
Yes,
to bring
so
Taylor
two
Swift
guys,
back into the conversation.
Just to put it real quick, our audience is saying, I wish they'd go back to talking about Team Swift. I can understand that. But here's what you need to know. The CFPB is basically created out of the financial collapse to protect consumers from predatory lending mortgage companies. And now it was created, by the way, by Elizabeth Warren, who wasn't a senator, but previously a Harvard law professor.
She was at Harvard misrepresenting her background.
And so now, after the election of President Trump, all these months later, Richard Cordray was the highest-ranking Obama holdover. He refused to leave. He finally stepped down, and in doing so on the way out the door, he said, oh, by the way, my right-hand person, Leandra English, will just stay in charge. The president said, I'm putting my person in charge. The White House saying we have the right to do it legally. The Office of Legal Counsel saying that the president has the authority to put someone in there. In fact,
President Trump actually tweeted about it, and he tweeted, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, has been a total disaster as run by the, keep scrolling guys for me, as run by the previous administration's pick. Financial institutions have been devastated and unable to properly serve the public. We'll bring it back to life. So where Griff was talking about, CFPB created under Dodd-Frank Act in 2010, thought up, concocted by Elizabeth Warren before she was even a senator as a professor. And President Trump and the Trump administration believes they have the legal authority to pick who fills the spot, at least temporarily, through the Federal Vacancies Act of 1998. So this is very interesting. Concern over who gets the parking spot tomorrow. But this also could be a big legal battle as well. So any decisions that are made in the interim.
It's going to be a short battle, but we need to tell our viewers why President Trump is opposed to it, why this tweet, why we're hearing it, and that is that President Trump believes that this independent agency is basically become a political unit that usurps the president's authority to protect consumers as he sees fit. Pete, we talked a little bit about the draining of the swamp and the regulation, over-regulation that has hurt the country.
It has a broad authority outside of the restraints of Congress. So it has been used by those on the left in many ways to go after banks, to go after financial institutions. Listen, we all want to know what our interest rate is on our credit card, right? It shouldn't be in the fine print. You shouldn't be able to change it. That's the idea, is we should be straightforward on lending. It's gone way beyond that in an anti-business way. That's why someone like Mick Mulvaney, who's the former director of the OMB, calls this department, not the former, he's the current director of the OMB. Now he has 2 jobs. He called as a congressman.
He needs to stop doing a good job, and then he'll get less responsibility.
He called it a joke. That's right. He's doing such a good job. He's got 2 jobs now. This is what he said about the CFPB previously.
The place is just, it's a wonderful example of how a bureaucracy will function if it has no accountability to anybody. It turns up being a joke, and that's what the CFPB really has been in a sick, sad kind of way, because you've got an institution that has tremendous authority over what y'all do for a living, over your businesses, over your members, but there's very little that your elected members of government can do to help you, to protect you against, say, overreach or abuse by that institution.
This will sound unrelated, but it's the same thing. Remember Brexit, what the Brits voted for to leave the EU? It's because the EU was given broad authority outside the sovereignty of that nation to make decisions for people that they never elected people to make decisions for them. Same thing with the CFPB. These are unelected bureaucrats in Washington making decisions that congressmen should be weighing in on, but they're not. This is bringing the authority back to the people as opposed to bureaucrats, and that's why you put Mick Mulvaney in charge.
And speaking of that as well, so also, you know, kind of being angry at the establishment or the swamp, so to speak, you have Congressman Jim Jordan actually has a message on Congress for the working people. He's a little bit concerned here, a message to the establishment. He puts them on notice. Listen.
The American people say, we're going to make Donald Trump president of the United States. If that's not sending a message to the establishment in this town, I don't know what will. So again, maybe we better think about what the American people are saying, the electoral process, and do what they sent us here to do. And that's the message for Paul Ryan, but that's a message for all of us. Every member of Congress, every member in the Senate, that's the message. Let's just get done what we said. Let's do what we promised the voters we're going to do. Let's do what they sent us here to do. You do that, I think things work out. I ran on certain things. Republicans ran on certain things. The same things Donald Trump ran on. Let's do that. And let's work with the president to do what we said.
So while the fight over the parking spot at the CFPB plays out, tax reform and all of the other issues like spending bills playing out, and Mitch McConnell in the hot seat, and the message from Jim Jordan there taking on the establishment, it's going to be quite something to watch in these final 12 days of Congress. And by the way, we want to know what you think. Send us an email at friends@foxnews.com. What is your message to the establishment? We want to read that to the establishment for you, the GOP leadership. Hopefully you're up, rested, had your turkey, did your shopping, and you're ready to come back and get busy.
Well, if you have your turkey, then you have more tryptophan, and you might be
we want to hear from you.
And also, by the way, if you're on Team Swift or Team Spears, you can add that too, but we really want to hear your message.
Or are you on Team Jim Jordan or Team Mitch McConnell?
That's hashtag.
The idea is that it was such a great message from Jim Jordan. What bigger, stronger message could you send than sending Donald Trump to the White House? Yet a year later, we still see the establishment and the swamp saying, we don't recognize this. We're going to resist this no matter what. And when you go to these diners, you go across the country, you talk to groups, they are 100% on Team Trump. There is no Team Mitch. There is no team.
But don't count Mitch out. No, I'm going to later in the show make the case for why you need him.
You may need him, but there's no team.
I feel like there's two teams brewing right here, and I'm caught in the middle of it.
It's like a lover's quarrel. But like, no, there is no Team Mitch. He may win on behalf of Republicans, but there's no constituency for him. and we'll see what happens on that. But let us know, are you with the establishment or not? They're telling me to read the headlines. I want to keep monologuing for a few minutes. Clearly, we need to move on. Some headlines for you. Family and friends gathering to say their goodbyes to a Texas Border Patrol agent whose cause of death remains a mystery. 36-year-old Rogelio Martinez laid to rest during a private funeral service in El Paso, Texas. The husband and father of 5 succumbing to traumatic injuries after responding to activity along the U.S.-Mexico border. The incident is being investigated as a, quote, potential assault.
And brace yourselves for long security lines and traffic grates. Millions hitting the skies and the roads today, returning home from the holidays. Airlines for America says around 2.3 million people are expected to be in the skies today.
Great.
And
I'll be
great.
one of them.
I know. And experts say 28.5 million people were expected to travel in the days surrounding Thanksgiving this year. And AAA saying 45.5 Americans decided to hit the road this year instead of flying. I like the train more than flying.
The train?
Personally. Yeah.
That's an East Coast thing, though. Everywhere else we're driving.
Yeah, true.
And I got one more. President George H.W. Bush reaching a huge milestone. He's now the longest living commander-in-chief in U.S. history. The 41st president is 93 years old and 166 days old, surpassing Gerald Ford, who passed away at 93 years old and 165 days old. President Bush and his wife also hold the record for the longest presidential marriage in American history with 72 years. That's amazing. That's your
really
headline.
Impressive. Yes.
And I don't like your headline because I have to go catch a flight after this, but we'll find you. I'm just going to put a lot of patience, put a smile on, and enjoy the mayhem.
That's right. The train.
But we got to get back to that Mitch battle.
That's right.
Because that is going to be something we got to talk about because, I know what you've said, the establishment, the swamp, but you can't get across the finish line without Mitch. He's so key. You can't even believe it. And they've got 12
It's still
days.
going. It's still going, guys.
Step up. Step up.
Oh, by the way.
All right, more to come.
tease. Is this the last stand for Mitch McConnell? Republicans distancing themselves from the Senate Majority Leader ahead of the 2018 primaries. Eric Erickson says there's plenty of reasons why he joins us live next.
And this one, that's Eric Erickson, but when we put it up on the screen, we'll have it. This Holocaust survivor was rescued by Americans more than 70 years ago. But he is proving that it's never too late to get back. Wait until you hear how he's thanking our troops. Stick around. This the last stand for Mitch McConnell. Politico now reporting that they're reporting a fact on the ground that Republicans are fleeing the Senate Majority Leader ahead of the 2018 primaries.
So the big question is, what can we expect next? Here to weigh in on it is Fox News contributor Eric Erickson. Hey, Eric.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Eric, how much trouble is Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in?
Well, technically not a ton because his colleagues within the Senate haven't turned on him, but it's really interesting that a lot of Republicans running for the Senate used to look for his endorsement and now they're running the other way. This turned into an issue in Alabama, and it's probably why Roy Moore is the nominee there. He turned it into a campaign against Mitch McConnell, as other Republicans are doing, because McConnell's not passing anyone's agenda other than his own agenda, and people are kind of tired of it.
Eric, let me ask you real quickly. We saw on health care, President Trump stood with Leader McConnell and said, Mitch, you're going to get it done, right? If not, it's going to be trouble for you. We haven't seen any of that from the president this go around on tax reform. Is this a subtle indicator that if they fail in the next 12 days, if they fail on tax reform, to pass, not the full legislation, but just to pass in the Senate, where there are at least 6 senators on the fence on passing this tax reform bill, is this a sign that Mitch McConnell's career could be coming to a close as a leader if he does not deliver in the next 12 days?
Hopefully so, and it should be. The fact that he can't rally these Republicans. Look, Mitch McConnell's had a habit over the last decade in the Senate of catering to the liberal Republicans who feel very emboldened under him. He always makes the conservatives the bad guy. It was always Ted Cruz's fault, Rand Paul's fault, Mike Lee's fault for things not happening. Well, now we're showing and seeing that it's the liberal Republicans in the Senate he's coddled all these years who are betraying him. And if he can't get them on board for him, then yeah, it probably is time for him to go.
Eric, I mean, if they manage to pass this bill, does he save his status as majority leader, or is the referendum still just, is it too clear? If you have candidates coming into the Senate running against this majority leader, how does he keep that position?
Well, he keeps it by wooing them once they get there. Mitch McConnell can send them on trips abroad right after they get elected and show them the ropes, so to speak, to ingratiate himself with them, which is what he's done in the past. Whether or not he can keep that up, I'm not sure. There is a growing backlash against him. Look, it's probably time for a new Senate leader on the Republican side. McConnell seems to be out of ideas on how to advance the agenda, and he doesn't seem to be willing to even push the president's agenda in the slightest.
Wait, Mitch McConnell claims to be a conservative. Why are the conservatives the bad guy for him? Why are they perpetually the bad guy?
Because McConnell believes that they're safe, so he always wants to get the liberal Republicans reelected. He always caters towards them, and he always puts them in the best light. He knows the conservatives are going to be safe where they run, and so he wants to protect the liberals. The downside of that is that they feel very emboldened to hijack the Republican agenda, and McConnell lets them get away with it.
Eric, how much trouble are you in if you're Mitch McConnell and the only person in Washington that's publicly supporting you is West Virginia Congressman Evan Jenkins? There he is, no relation, I should point out, but he's the only guy that's coming to the leader's defense.
Right. You know, if the Republicans put a skunk up as Senate Republican leader, they would probably get more people coming to hang out with the skunk than with Mitch McConnell. He's not a popular guy, and deservedly so. McConnell has made this bet himself.
Well, it'll be interesting. And Steve Bannon has certainly made the 2018 election in many ways a referendum on Mitch McConnell. He's not a popular guy, at least for candidates on the campaign trail. Eric Erickson, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up, they may look like giant gifts on the street, but these massive roadblocks are actually a present for terrorists. We'll explain.
And yet another attempt to silence conservatives. A university refuses to publish a Republican student's opinion piece about free speech. That student joins us next. Time now for your news by the numbers. First, $7.9 billion. That's how much money U.S. retailers raked in, smashing an all-time online sales record over Black Friday and Thanksgiving. Next, $1 million per minute. American shoppers speed spending through those record books. Shopify reporting the big sales as traditional brick and mortar shopping declines. And finally, 203,086. That's how many gun background checks were fielded by the FBI on Black Friday. That number setting a new single-day record, up from last year's high of over 185,000 checks. Pete, over to you.
Thanks, Griff. Well, another attempt to silence conservatives. This time, Columbia University's campus paper, called the Columbia Daily Spectator, is refusing to publish or even consider a Republican student's opinion piece about free speech. Our next guest wrote that op-ed and was even targeted by New York City's Antifa branch. But still, Columbia University and the newspaper remain silent. Joining me now, campus reform correspondent and president of the Columbia University College Republicans, Aristotle Boussalis. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So you're not just one Republican student at Columbia. You're the president of the Columbia Campus Republicans.
Yeah.
You have been targeted by Antifa in New York City. They literally put up flyers with your face on it saying what?
Yes, they said white supremacy lives here.
So you're the face of white supremacy, apparently,
Yes.
on the campus of Columbia. So you've been defamed, including in your own dorm hallway.
Yeah.
And yet the newspaper there won't even give you a little bit of space for 800 words to give your perspective. Why not?
Yeah, so as Campus Reform has highlighted, I think they were not willing to hear my opinion just because they don't want me to have an ability to speak and to address these students. If you looked at their biased reporting, they've labeled our group as a far-right group to begin with.
The Republicans?
Yes, the Republicans. And then when we hosted Herman Cain, they said we had 40 students come. We had 80 students. And they've also had unbiased coverage. They've had at least 5 to 10 plus op-eds that were negative about our club and have very few articles that actually promoted free speech in our club in general. So I think they're not willing to have this conversation.
Any op-eds from the Spectator about Antifa, their violent tactics, or the smear tactics against you?
Yeah, so this op-ed was actually the first time Columbia Spectator actually would highlight this event. Fox News, as you know, reported in Campus Reform Report. This was a national story. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't our newspaper reported this issue? It's like...
This is the dream come true for a campus publication. Having run a campus publication at Princeton, if you can get a local story that's a national story, your job is to own it and to be the paper of record for that.
Yeah.
You're saying instead, because they're not interested in both sides of the story, they've ignored it.
Yeah, and also, I also like that. They also put a hit piece on me with one opinion article, which highlighted my name and said I did all this for fame. That's very untrue, and I only did these opportunities to go on Fox to really protect conservatives on this campus and give them a voice.
All right, part of your voice that's been squelched is this op-ed that you submitted. I'm going to read a portion of what you had submitted but was rejected. It said this. It says, because Columbia rarely hosts speakers that represent conservative values on campus, it was my club's desire to fill this gap. We have students at Columbia that are not willing to listen and engage, probably for fear of being offended or discovering that their own assumptions could be flawed. College campuses are battlegrounds for these issues, and we are dumbfounded at the slowness of Columbia University to see these truths. You write dumbfounded, but at the same time, you know what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with far left-wingers who don't want to hear another side of the perspective.
Yeah, and it's really sad because this is college. I don't pay $60,000+ in order to hear just one point of view. I think we have to go to universities to really challenge ourselves and hear a different side. By going to these different talks and hearing from Herman Cain or Dennis Prager, we learn about different ideas. And when people ask questions, I learn about my liberal counterparts. And that's just as productive as hearing someone like Dennis Prager.
Well, if you ever need a speaker, I'd be happy to come.
Oh, I'd love to have you any day.
I just think it's such an important role to bring those voices, and the fact that universities squelch that and don't cherish it is unfortunate. Thanks for having the courage. I mean, literally, there's not a lot of kids that would say my face was stamped against being a white supremacist that would stand up and keep fighting. It's ridiculous. It's slander, and without folks like you, we'd be dead in the water on these campuses. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Aristotle, appreciate your time.
Yeah.
All right. Coming up, a teenage girl is honoring and comforting the families of fallen officers with a teddy bear. Her mission is incredible, and you'll hear from her next. And how confident is the White House that Congress will deliver tax cuts for all of you by Christmas? Well, we're going to ask the man himself, the Director of Legislative Affairs for the White House, Mark Short. He's coming up next.
We're going to give the American people a huge tax cut for Christmas. Hopefully that will be a great, big, beautiful Christmas present.
So will Congress be able to deliver that Christmas present? Mark Short is President Trump's man on the Hill, the Director of Office of Legislative Affairs. Mark, thanks for joining us. Is it going to get done? The crunch is on.
Griff, thanks for having me. I think it is going to get done. It has to get done for the American people. It's less about the politics of the timing. It's more about that this president's begun to turn this economy around. Unemployment's its lowest point in 17 years. We've seen over $5 trillion in asset value added to the markets. But what we now need is we need tax relief to get the regular economy growing so the middle class can benefit as well.
Well, and Mark, in order to do that, the Senate needs to get tax reform done. Republicans can only lose 2 in the Senate. There's at least 6 senators with concerns from various reasons, whether it's the deficit over the individual mandate, or if you're Senator Johnson, the way that pass-through income is being treated for small businesses. How concerned are you that this gets done in the Senate, given that math problem?
Well, I think some of those concerns are legitimate concerns, but I think that the tax writers here in the Senate Finance Committee have done an outstanding job. Their bill provides significant tax relief for middle-income families. In fact, estimates say if you're earning a family roughly earning about $70,000 a year, you'll benefit from over $2,000 in tax relief. It's targeted toward middle-income families. It provides simplification to the tax code, which is something the president asked for. And one of the things that we've also asked for, the president said, is he wanted corporate tax relief. When the president traveled recently to Asia, he saw Singapore at 17%, South Korea at 22%. America is outdated at 35%. And when you add in state income taxes, the effective rate is actually about 40%. We can't compete like that. If we want to bring jobs back to America and stop losing jobs from going overseas, we need this sort of tax relief. And I think Republican senators know that for their constituents, which is why I think you'll see them come together this week to get it done.
Mark, besides Mitch McConnell, who's definitely on the line here, and some might say his majority leader status is on the line on this bill, what are the 1 or 2 senators who are most important, most critical, whether in leadership or a critical vote, to get this across the finish line?
Well, Pete, I think as you guys just mentioned, when your margin is as thin as it is, unfortunately, we've not been able to earn support of Democrats. I think that's unfortunate. I think as you look at when you say that you're going to provide $2,000 in relief to those families earning $70,000 a year, it is targeted for middle-income families. When you're going to bring corporate relief to keep jobs in America, it's especially disappointing the Democrat senators across the Midwest who have seen companies flee their state. That's what's most disappointing to see they're not joining us.
We know Democrats are out. They're all in for resistance. But amongst Republicans, I mean, not even necessarily votes, like who's critical to put whipping or putting the screws to people to make sure this happens?
Well, Pete, I think that each and every member is important. I think that you've seen certainly your graph showed the members that have voiced concerns, but I think that even those members are going to come around in the end and be there and support the tax relief plan.
Lastly, Mark, quickly, let me ask you if you're going to have a problem if the Senate does pass something this week, they hope, I think on Thursday, and it includes cutting the corporate tax rate to 20% and delaying that 1 year. Is that a problem for the White House, who I think you guys said you want it now?
Well, Griff, I think you're right. I think the president said that he's more anxious to see that tax relief start immediately. The House plan does start immediately. That's something that'll get reconciled in conference because the House has passed their bill, the Senate will pass theirs. We'll go to conference and we'll reconcile the two. But ultimately, we think that what the Senate bill does, we are very supportive of what it does, is making sure that it addresses the priorities the president laid out as simplification, corporate relief, and middle income targeting. That's where we are.
Well, Mark, we also want to get your take on the mix-up over the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and who's going to head that. So I want to read this tweet from Senator Elizabeth Warren and get your reaction to it. The only thing that will turn the CFPB into a disaster is for real Donald Trump to ignore Dodd-Frank and name an acting director determined to destroy the agency. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you guys were addressing this at the top of the hour very effectively. I think that the CFPB was the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren when she was a professor, and it is a disaster as it is. It has no accountability. It was created in a way that it does not even get its appropriations from Congress. So it has unelected bureaucrats running an agency that has done nothing but look to kill jobs in America. Mick Mulvaney will do an outstanding job there as an interim director until the president's able to appoint somebody to come in full time. But even some federal courts have suggested that the structure of the CFPB is unconstitutional as it is. It is an unelectable bureaucrats running that agency, and yet they say it was designed to be non-political, yet the director, Richard Cordray, who's leaving, is leaving to try to go run for governor of Ohio. It is absolutely a political agency that has been looking to kill jobs in America. It needs reform. Mick Mulvaney will do an outstanding job there on an interim basis until we appoint a full-time director.
Quick detail, I didn't even know this. Where does it get its funding from then if it doesn't come from
It
Congress?
comes directly, it directly takes its funding out of the Treasury. So it is something that does not get its dollars appropriated from Congress. It is not accountable to elected representatives and to the American people.
Now, your critics like Senator Warren, Mark, are going to say that you are enabling the predatory lending of mortgage lenders who led us into essentially the crisis we had in 2008.
Griff, I think that Congress has a role and a function here. That's why it's elected by the people. It's not designed. We're not supposed to be creating agencies that are not accountable to the American people, and that's what we've done with CFPB. Mick Mulvaney will do a good job of making sure that it is accountable both to consumers, but also allowing free markets to work so we're no longer killing jobs in our country.
So, Mark, as we talk about this, Monday morning, Lisa has mentioned who gets the parking spot. Who gets the parking spot on Monday morning,
I think
Mark?
we believe the Vacancies Act is pretty clear that the president gets to appoint the successor and that Mick Mulvaney will be leading the CFPB until we're able to have a full-time nominee confirmed by the U.S. Senate.
And I assume you guys are bracing for a legal fight here over this.
Look, if we have to go that route, then we will. But we think, as I said, that the Vacancies Act is pretty clear. And so we certainly would hope that the deputy director will acknowledge that Mick Mulvaney is the director and that the team there will work with him to help execute its function as is currently described under Dodd-Frank's legislation.
Mark Sharp.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark, thanks for taking time and get some rest because you're going to have a busy week coming up.
Thanks for having me, guys.
that.
Talk about a ton of work on his plate and very few vacation days.
Yes, yes.
Turning now to some more headlines. The U.S. is now condemning Pakistan's release of a wanted terrorist. The White House calling Hafiz Saeed's release a step in the wrong direction, saying a refusal to rearrest him would hurt relations with Pakistan. Saeed is believed to have founded the militant group behind the deadly 2008 Mumbai terror attack that killed nearly 170 people, including 6 Americans.
And some German Christmas markets getting creative while protecting pedestrians from terrorists. The city of Bochum maintaining the Christmas spirit while placing massive gift-wrap barricades to avert political attacks. This less than a year after 12 people were killed and dozens of others were injured during a truck attack at a Berlin Christmas market.
That is fantastic.
So sad.
No, the attack is sad.
Right, but it's
barriers.
Just, yeah.
I like it. A Holocaust survivor giving back to the soldiers who saved him. Bernard Darty donating $1 million to organizations helping wounded veterans, including the Wounded Warrior Project. The now 83-year-old was only 10 when he was freed by American soldiers in France during World War II. When you hear these stories, it's powerful. Bernard says, quote, "The gratitude I feel to those men is beyond words. Without American troops, my family and I simply would not have existed. I've heard stories from the lips of World War II survivors like that who said when the Americans showed up, I finally had freedom. Otherwise, I never would have. Really powerful stuff.
Wow. All right, we got to check in on the weather. Rick Ragmuth. Rick, where are you? You're outside. Are you cold? Are you warm? It looks nice.
I forgot my coat.
Yeah, you look cold, Rick.
It's chilly, and take a look at this, guys.
You can borrow my jacket, but I don't know if it'll fit.
What do you got?
Look at 6th Avenue here in Manhattan.
Wow.
It's like it happened overnight. Suddenly it is Christmas. Out here on the streets of 6th Avenue, which is such a great time. They do it so well. That's the lights right out here outside our building. When you come to town, make sure you come and say hi. Take a look at the weather map, show you what's going on. It is chilly here, but not that bad, really. 28 degrees in Chicago. That's your cool spot on the map right now. Overall, I tell you what, for this time of year, it could be a lot worse. And travel-wise today, we got a great day. Little bit of snow now that's falling across parts of New England. That'll cause maybe a little bit of slick roads, not a major accumulation. And travel delays today are all going to be out across the west. San Francisco getting some rain showers through this morning, a line of heavier showers. It will be more scattered in nature later this afternoon. The Pacific Northwest will see a pretty good amount of rain. Some spots maybe 2 or 3 inches. So a few delays there, but aside from that, no problems on any of the roads. And take a look at these temperatures. 73 in Denver today, 63 in Kansas City when we're almost pushing December. Quite amazing. Tomorrow we're at 51 in Fargo. So we kind of are going to warm up across a lot of the east this week. And overall, no major cold shot of air, no big snowstorms or anything coming on just yet, which is great news, I guess. Unless you
That
like
is great
snow.
news. I wish Washington had that kind of great news. Like, great news, everything's going to pass.
Plus, that's my bias that I don't want the snow. So.
Exactly.
I want the snow.
I just want the weather fair and balanced, Rick. I just want it fair and balanced.
Yeah, fair and balanced.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. All right, coming up, a Border Patrol agent is laid to rest. As mystery surrounds his death, our next guest attended the services for Agent Rogelio Martinez. He'll tell us the latest on the investigation and what we still need answers to.
And screaming liberals beware. Your anger at President Trump, it may actually be bad for your health. Could actually kill you. There's a study on this.